that I get over and over and
Wayne,
over
you're
on
not
the telephone.
You're not going to get the world to buy cartons and dig a hole and live there. You're not going to get that. I mean, quite honestly, for 98% of the world's population, there's not much we can do, but we should know about it. So here it is. I'm only got a few seconds here. I need a decision. I mean, we're going to either have full disclosure on everything, or let me go on to open lines and let's go on our merry way tonight. What do you want to do? Well, we went on our merry way. So for several years, that's the way it was. Then one day, well, I got an email in from David Booth. David's on the air with us. Hey, David, welcome back.
Thank you, George. I appreciate talking to you and the Coast to Coast listening audience tonight.
I'll let you explain. You sent me the email several months ago. Tell me why you did that. And, of course, obviously, you're back on the program.
Well, I think that everything that the listening audience would have to, to gain in their knowledge of those past incidents from 2004 was just contained there in that little clip that you sent, and that I can add on to also, if you allow me to, in a conversation that I had with your producer, Tom Danhauser, before we came on.
Sure.
I had come onto your show, your program, that I had never heard about before prior to 2004. Being a very public figure, but being a very, very public figure in the context of being one that I had shunned the United States media with my last American interview in 1988 with the 2020 program that's on the ABC television network that I had done. After that, I had not done another American interview. I had a very private visit to my family and family connections that I had had in 2004. Just a couple of months after I had been on your program.
Right.
I had not known about your program, had not known anything about it. I was brought to your attention, and honestly, you can relate to your listening audience that was done because of your connection with a gentleman by the name of Wayne Green. Is that correct, sir? Wayne Green, after that time, knew of a very personal visit that I was going on and my wife was going on, Kathy. My wife and I, Kathy, we 6 months out of the year, we are all over the world for all of our research projects and all of our charitable endeavors that we do.
Right.
We were basically, quote-unquote, sandbagged. And by the way, I just want to just tell your listening audience this, and George, I hope you don't mind, but this is very important because a lot of your listening audience out there, they don't know it. They have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. Prior to me coming on your program, just in the last few minutes, just the last 20 minutes, your producer, is Tom Danhauser, is that what he's called? George, your producer?
One of my producers.
One of your producers.
Right.
And Tom and I are talking. And I will never forget this as long as I live. And this is one thing. All your listening audience, all they know is they hear that the stuff and what you just played, the clips. They never know what goes on behind the scenes. But like I was just talking with Tom about, right after that, and George, you remember well, I was in Paris. Kathy and I had just come up from Portugal. That right after that, when you quote unquote kicked us off the air, and everybody, there's the media firestorm in the United States, and everybody's talking about George this, and David Booth this. No one ever knows that Tom called me back in Paris and said, "Hey, Dave, thank you very much for being on the program. I know what happened. I'm sorry for it. I didn't know what happened to me. This is your world. This is Tom's world. But I will never, ever forget that as long as I live."
See, and when you sent me this email and explained your side of it and your position after all these years, I'm the kind of person, David, to look at the facts and say, you know what? There were two people bounced off this program. Maybe one of them really didn't know what the heck was going on. Maybe one of them really thought he was going to be on to talk about something else, while we were basically persuaded to do a program on this historical meeting with Sister Lucia. And when you got on that night in March and said, George, I can't tell you what she told me. It's between her, it's between me. I can't say anything. I now believe your email that you didn't know that we were told we were going to do a whole program on you.
I had no idea.
And subsequently, you're back now, David. And I'm a person who is understanding, and you're back on the program.
Well, George, for anybody in your listening audience that would ever question your credibility, having me on your program right now is a testament to your fairness and your honesty, just based on one simple fact. It's called honesty. You don't care, and I have no opportunity to listen to your program, being where I am on a regular basis. But because I'm on tonight, I listened to it, and you had the young lady on, Nancy Leader.
Mm-hmm.
No one can ever say against George Norrie, and remember, you're juxtaposed against everybody else in the United States media. George Norrie does it fair. He does it honest. And what else can you do, George?
Might take him a while to figure it all out, but I get there.
Absolutely.
But I get, David, you are an internationally known psychic. You're a researcher. You've been all over the place, and a lot with the BBC. And tonight we're going to talk about some things that you see, some things that you feel. We won't dwell again about the plane crash dream. That's on record. People now know what you did, and the FAA verifies that you did call them. And are you still getting haunting dreams about things?
George, I can tell you that, and we have talked about that before in private. And what I know, and what I have accumulated over the last 25 years of my life, because, and remember the standpoint that I'm talking from, I am talking from a unique standpoint that I am the only person that has ever had a precognitive experience that has ever been fully verified prior to the event occurring.
Yes.
By a government agency. That's indisputed. My quest in my life and my research in my life that I have devoted my life to is finding out just one simple fact. Why? Why did it happen to me? In those almost 25 years, I've come to a number of conclusions. Not the final conclusion, mind you, but I've come to a number of conclusions, which explains something that I believe will explain to people, ordinary people, everybody listening to us, why we are feeling the way that we're feeling, why we are meant to be in this time, why we understand without understanding the things that are happening to us in our day and time that transcends politics, religion, philosophy. And did you understand what I'm saying, George?
Absolutely, and I want everybody who's listening tonight to really understand why they are beginning to feel the way they feel about events, happenings on this planet. It's things, David, that you have been feeling probably all your life.
Oh, of course. I mean, not only have I been feeling, and honestly, George, even though I am the most, without doubt, without record, the most uniquely qualified individual on the face of the earth to talk about what I'm talking about, what I have accumulated in my knowledge and my research over the last 25 years has proved to me one thing. I'm not alone.
You're not alone.
I'm just the only one that ever said anything about it.
You were able to document it, and in that, I think, puts you apart from the rest of the pack.
Absolutely. George, the world that we're living in right now is, there are so many of your listening audience that will understand this term, the quote-unquote last days. What so many people do not understand is that the United States, the American people, are unique among all the people in the world in the quote-unquote awakening experience of human consciousness in the world. I sent to one of your producers today. I sent her a thing, a list of. You can better clarify it than me, or better articulate it than me. But basically, what we are experiencing right now in the United States is not uncommon. In the 1800s, in the early 1800s, it was called the Second Awakening. The Second Awakening. And in the late 1980s, when I chose, and part of my research, to uproot my whole family and go to the New England area, I gained, in 20 years of being there, an incredible insight into who and what exactly we are as Americans and how important we are. Listen. Hey, George?
Yeah.
Everybody is knocking us guys today. You can, even our own presses, but let me tell you something, George. The American people, everybody listening to me right now, we are the most incredible tribe, ethnic group, and remember, this transcends race, religion, etc. We are the most incredible people that have ever been put on this earth. And we are put on this earth for a reason.
Are we going to pull through this, David, do you think?
Yes, we will. But with a caveat, we are going to pull through it with trial and tribulation, such as will, quote unquote, from the book of Luke, will try men's heart. But each and every one of us have the ability, have everything inside of us that we need to know to get through all of this. It is, on the one hand, it is so complex. On the other hand, it is so simple, it's ridiculous.
I would kind of compare you now to Nostradamus. Has anybody done that before?
As a matter of fact, I believe that a lot of people don't know about this, but back in 2004, when I was talking with your producers, and they had known about this, that from what my experiences in 1979, there was a group of people in North Carolina that had actually created a quote-unquote cult surrounding me. And that's why, and like I said, like we talked, in 1989 was the last American interview I ever gave, prior to the BBC interview in 1999, on the 20th anniversary of the crash. But in 1989, that was on 2020, the ABC television program. That was the last American interview I gave, because there were so many people that were looking to me as some kind of savior. Hey, George, I'm not a savior. I'm no different than you and everybody that's listening out there. The only thing that I did different is I did something about it.
You're the messenger.
There's a lot of different ways to say that, George. And you know what I'm talking about, sir.
Yeah. You know, since you were on and since you met with Sister Lucia, she's since passed on. When she died, David, how did you feel? I mean, did you feel as if whatever you two did talk about is hidden within you? You know, she was the one. They heard the 3 secrets. She knows what that 3rd secret is. I still don't think it's really been revealed to us.
Okay, well, you know what, George, that's a fascinating question. And, George, the connection, and, again, this is all, again, these are things that your listening audience is hearing that they've never been privy to. All the stuff, all the stuff underneath everything that they see. She was my mother's sister's daughter. I mean, we're talking about family here.
Sister Lucia was your mother's sister's daughter.
And that is what...
Nobody knew that.
And guess what? Nobody was supposed to know that.
Why didn't you tell us then?
I was not... Can I just be honest with you here?
You apparently always have been.
Wayne knew that. I was in Europe. Kathy and I were in Europe. We were in Portugal. Wayne gave me a call about that coast-to-coast program that you guys wanted to talk to me about our adventures through Europe.
Stay with us, Wayne. I want to get your take on that 3rd secret of Fatima. Next hour, we'll open up the phone lines as well. David Booth is our guest, the internationally known psychic and researcher. And when we come back, we'll be back with some of the predictions of David Booth. What does he see for the future of mankind? And then your phone calls next hour on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie with David Booth. David, I had heard over the last couple of years that you might have had some heart or health problems. One, I want to make sure you're okay these days. What happened?
Well, a couple of years ago, I had a major heart attack, and what they did is, it's amazing. Fortunately, I don't know if a lot of people know about this in your listening audience, that the newest science, and fortunately, that I was able to go to the University of Tennessee Hospital in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yes.
When I had my first heart attack. And there were only 2 hospitals at that time. A lot of them are doing it now, but there were only 2 hospitals at the time where they're doing that. The standard thinking that most of your listening audience may have is that when a heart stops, that after 4 or 5 minutes, all the cells die. Well, that's not true, George.
Is that how long yours stopped?
Mine stopped for, Kathy, what was it, 6 minutes?
My God.
Yeah, six minutes.
All right.
Mine stopped for 6 minutes. But fortunately, at that time, that the University of Tennessee Hospital and San Francisco Hospital, they were the only 2 there doing a radical new therapy, that what they discovered is that when your heart stops and you're laying there and you're seemingly dead, guess what? You're not dead. The cells in your body, your heart cells and your brain cells, etc., it takes them hours to die. You know what kills them, George? It's the oxygen that they infuse into them that kills them.
I didn't know that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When this happened to you, I mean, did you see the light? Did you go over to the other side?
George, I have been over to the side over to the other side, quote unquote, so many times that when it did happen to me, as a matter of fact, Kathy and I were visiting my son and my daughter-in-law down here in Tennessee. But are you familiar with a gentleman by the name of David Icke?
Oh, real well. David's been on the show a number of times.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. David Icke and I have known each other for almost 20 years, and a number of years ago, David Icke called me and Kathy, and he invited us down to Brazil, and we were more than privileged and honored to be a participant in a ceremony that I'm sorry, sweetie, what's that thing called?
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca.
You took a little bit of that stuff?
Both Kathy and I did. And that was the first time in my life that it really opened up to me how connected each and every one of us are connected to this earth.
You know, it's funny because when David was on the program, he was telling us about his Brazilian trip and his ayahuasca. So,
he was on your program.
Oh, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's been on. You know, he's going through some problems now, David. Somebody has basically taken over his books. And I've been trying to get him on the program, and if you talk to him, just let him know that we want him back on.
Oh, yeah. Kathy, you talk to Linda every week, right? Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, Kathy talks to his wife every week.
Anyway, David, let's get into some of your predictions. People are going crazy. They want to know what you see.
What I see is exactly what everybody else sees, George. And this. You know what? This is one of the most incredible revelations that I have, quote unquote, discovered in almost 30 years of my life and the research and everything that's happened to me. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows what is going on, but nobody knows how to fully articulate it. The people that know how to fully articulate it, they don't know who to talk to.
Now, when you say everyone knows what is going on, break that down for me.
The times that we were living in, there were a number of, depending on the cultural imperative that you have to describe it, are called the last days. And we can go from every culture, and we can go through, the Christian culture of the last days. We can go through, every single religious culture, indigenous culture on the earth. Everybody knows, living in the world today, that we are living in what is called the last times.
So do you believe we are in the end times, basically?
George, not only do I believe it, not only do I know it, I can prove it. I can prove it.
All right, I'm going to have you prove it, David.
Read the book of Revelations.
I have.
Read the book of Jeremiah. Read the book of Isaiah.
What are the signs, though? What are the signs that point out to you that these things are happening?
Very simple. Very simple. In the book of Matthew and the Christian Bible, Jesus said that you will know that it is the end times when you can look at the time that you are living in and you can compare it to the time that Noah was living in. Going back to Noah. And here's what's interesting, too, George, and let me just do a little sidebar here.
All right.
Noah, a man, 7 sons, flood comes, everything like that.
Everything's wiped out.
Everything's wiped out. Do you know what the Chinese symbol for a flood is?
What?
A man and 7 sons and a big boat. But also, that Chinese symbol also means danger and opportunity. You can never separate danger and opportunity. Isn't that incredible?
Well, what's the opportunity if all of us are going to get wiped out?
No. The wiped out, I mean, you're just looking at the physical form. This isn't who we. This is not who we are. The physical form is not who we are. We are so much more. We are existing in so many other dimensions. Have you ever had? I don't know if you know this gentleman. What's his name? Wolf. Fred Wolf.
Oh yeah, he's been on.
has.
Sure.
He is one of the most fantastic physicists and one of the most incredible physicists that has ever been graced or has ever been allowed to be, to present himself and his ideas to anybody. I met him over 20 years ago down in Brazil, and my wife Kathy and I, we were down there in Brazil, and we just met this guy. I mean, he'd kind of go like a long-haired hippie guy and stuff like that.
Were you like at a conference, or you just stumbled into him?
We just stumbled into him. We were going up to what's that place that there were the thing that we're going to, sweetie? Chichen Itzu or
oh yeah.
Anyway, my wife's over here. She'd give me a bad look every time I ask her a question. And but anyway, and we just stumbled up to him. But anyway, we got into an incredible conversation with him. And little did we know that he was one of the most, or he still is, one of the most incredible physicists this world has ever known.
Well, and he also looks at this life with a different eye, not just as a scientist, but I think at a metaphysician. I mean, he understands what you do, and that is to look beyond.
Absolutely. And isn't that incredible?
Well, it's incredible because not a lot of people do what he does.
You know what? I'm very impressed that you know of him and you've had him on your program. I mean, you know what? He is one of those types of people that anybody that if they can listen to Fred, once a week, it's too little.
Well, for someone who believes we're in end times like you do, you don't seem concerned about what we're going to go through to get through it all.
Oh, heavens, no.
Why not?
Well, because guess what? It's this is a part of our human existence. This is part of who we are. And listen, I wish we had hours and hours to talk about what the quote-unquote grand strategy, grand game is. George, let me tell you something. Like right now, exactly in this exact moment in time, millions of Americans are looking at the war in Iraq, and they're looking at this, and they're looking at that. What's the reality of it? The reality of it is that we are entering the age of quote unquote the new kings. That everything is being devolved back down to ethnicity, to religion, to cultural. Well, let's just call it, frankly, what it is. To tribe ties. Once you devolve everything down to those little ties, and we can see it happen in the European Union right now, that is what is more able and manageable to be controlled.
What do you know about the New World Order group?
Oh, the New World Order? You know what, George, this is a fascinating subject, and here's what the New World Order is. The New World Order is very simply one thing: putting our planet, global Earth, under one government system. That's a very simplistic way to say that, but it is a much more complicated issue. As you can see, in the last 60 years in the European Union, and this is what a lot of people, it's staring everybody in the face, George, but nobody sees it. In the last 60 years, Europe has had peace. 600 years prior to that, they had no peace at all. It was constant war.
And isn't that unusual, that we'd have that kind of flip?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And make no mistake about it. And we can go a lot into symbolism here and stuff. Today, if everybody turned on their TVs this afternoon, or for any of your listening audience that turned on TV afternoon, they were looking at Queen Elizabeth coming into the United States.
Right.
Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany. And, and this is no slight on her. I mean, it's just calling a spade a spade. She is Adolf Hitler's protege and lineage. and who has proposed a unified European constitution, who has proposed a European army. What did she present the United States with this past week? Have you talked about this? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have not talked about this.
But George, am I correct that you know what I'm talking about, even though we may not have talked about this?
I know where you're headed.
That's right. She presented symbolically to the American people the first American, or the first map of the world from 1507. That called America, America. And George, you cannot talk about this subject without saying one thing. Everybody can look and they can see the Capitol Dome, capital of the United States, where the House of Representatives and the Senate sits. And there's a great big dome on top, and on top of that dome there's a great big statue. I defy any of your listening audience right now, and test me if I'm wrong, to do any research that they can on any internet that they can and tell you what the name of it is, because it's been scrubbed from everything. But once you know the secret of the name of the statue on the top of the Capitol, once you understand its interrelationship with the Washington Monument, and as you know, as an obelisk, once you understand those two connections and tie it in with Queen Elizabeth's visit here, and then tie it in also with Angela Merkel's, the Chancellor of Germany, not just anybody, but the Chancellor of Germany, who has proposed a unified European Constitution, a European army, separate from the United States. George, now we're going down into the deep, deep depths.
Now, what about the sign of the beast, David?
The sign of the beast? It is so simple as to be ridiculous, and I don't know if you've ever had it on your program before, but if you haven't, I would strongly, and please, there are so many more people that are much more knowledgeable about this subject, and they're able to speak about it, of what's coming next year in 2008 with the real ID. Now, they're doing it with animals first. By the way, George, did you know that there are a number of Amish communities around the United States?
Oh, yeah.
That are refusing to ID their animals?
Get chipped?
Absolutely.
Well, and I think that's good. I wouldn't get chipped as a human being, would you?
Here's the conundrum, though, George. Here's the conundrum. It's not just being chipped. In May 2008, 1 year from today, George, every single American will have to have a national ID card. It's called a driver's license, but, it's the Real ID Act.
Yep.
But that gives us all a number.
And it's going to happen. See, you're indirectly telling us the future.
Absolutely.
Without telling us the future, but...
Absolutely.
Like Nostradamus would do, like he wrote in those quatrains. And
that's what we have to do, George. That's what we have to do. I wish there were so many more conversations that we could have. Hey, George, here is something that I want you, or you understand this. I know you understand this, but your listening audience really has to understand. If anybody was to say, what is George Norrie's program? And they would say, well, it's conspiracy. It's conspiracy this, is conspiracy that. Here's what they don't understand. What is conspiracy? The word conspiracy itself has its Latin root in spiare, which is spirit. And when put together, it basically means breathing together. Breathing together. Now, taken in this light, it is really interesting that the word conspiracy has always had, even to this time, such negative connotations.
It scares people.
Absolutely. And everybody, it's like hello, inherently they're trained to believe that the act of our spirits breathing together is a nefarious thing. But here's the other thing, too, George. The word theory, as in, quote-unquote, conspiracy theory. The word theory is derived from the Greek theros, which is called spectator. That's the exact definition of it.
David, hold on with us. We're going to take this break at the top of the hour. We're going to open up the phone lines with you when we come back. David's website is linked up right now at coasttocoastam.com. If you need to email me, we'll always make that simple for you. It's George at coasttocoastam.com. We come to David Booth, who made an incredible prediction back in 1979. Fought back from a massive heart attack. He's back with us right now on Coast to Coast AM. We'll take your phone calls with him next. Well, we're going to take your phone calls this hour with David Booth. End-time questions or general questions for him, and also into open lines with him as well about end times. But I want to go to David's wife, Kathy Booth, here right now. David, as you know, suffered a massive heart attack. And Kathy, before we move on, I want to make sure, because you're home with him, I want to make sure we can continue with this hour with him. How's he doing?
He's doing quite fine. He's tired, of course, but we have equipment here. An oxygen tank has become a regular part of our life. Actually, fortunately, not that he needs it all the time, but when he gets tired, we need to have it on hand.
Okay.
But he's really doing very well. He's quite stable, and we have a good life together, and we're still able to travel, so we're very, very thankful.
All right. I just want to make sure that this 2 hours of talking does not take him away from the oxygen or anything like that.
No, he's doing good. Believe me, George. I wouldn't let it happen.
Okay. Thanks, Kathy. And we'll be back with David Booth in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. We're going to take your phone calls this hour now with David Booth. Take your questions as well. End time prophecy questions as well. David, you ready for some phone calls?
Absolutely, George.
Let us go to the phones. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi, George.
Yes.
Hi. I wanted to ask your guest. He knows what Sister
Lucia
yes. knows. Well, I'm sure she said, for him not to say anything. Will the church ever say anything? Does he think the church will ever say anything?
About that third secret?
Uh-huh.
Okay. David, you want to comment on that? Thank you for the call.
No, absolutely. I mean, after, I was at the time that we had the show, in which Wayne Green knew very well about, is that at that time, that I was not able to speak about.
Right.
I was able to speak about it 1 week before Israel made the announcement that the Sanhedrin was reestablished. And I know that you know about the Sanhedrin being reestablished right after that. And that whole, George, you could do a whole different show on that, and with a whole lot of other people more knowledgeable about but basically, the message was simple. That, upon her death, was the last days.
And, of course, the significance of the formation, again, of the Sanhedrin is really tied into end times prophecy.
Absolutely. And you can find that in Jeremiah, you can find that in Isaiah, you can also find that in the Quran.
Let's move on to our next show. Let's go to our wild card line. You are on Coast to Coast. Hi there.
Hi, George. Hi, David. First-time caller. My name is Greg from Columbia, Missouri.
I know it well, Greg, when I go to watch those interesting football games.
Yeah. Well, I had a question for your guest tonight. I was wondering if you could go into a little more detail about your experience in Brazil with the native drink, ayahuasca. I'm actually typing a paper on that right now. And I was wondering also if you're familiar with the works of Terence McKenna. And thanks for listening to it off the air.
Okay, sure thing.
Okay, well. First of all, Terrence McKenna, we partied together, so enough said with that. But the experience that I had with and please forgive me, Kathy, how do you pronounce that again? Ayahuasca?
Ayahuasca.
I still can't pronounce it.
That's all right. I've had my words, too, in my life.
Oh,
David,
okay. But, I was invited down with David Icke, and Kathy and I went down. Kathy didn't do it, but I did it. And it was it was the most incredible experience I had in my life. That it showed me that the existence that we live right now in our human bodies is like, hello.
Did you have an out-of-body experience?
George, you know what? Out-of-body experience is just too common to call it. I mean, I saw rising up around me the multiple dimensions that we live in.
Did you take this stuff before or after your heart attack?
Before? Oh, no, before, George. Before.
Are you? I don't think you'd do it now, would you?
Oh, heavens, no. Kathy, you'd kill me. Kathy, you'd kill me, wouldn't you?
Well, if she didn't, the stuff might. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi, Rod from Washington, D.C.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the number of the beast, and I thought we might discuss Revelation 13, verse 18. There's been some confusion about that, or misapprehension. It begins with, here is wisdom, and goes on to the number 666. There's a grave problem that Hildegard of Bingham's the one that thought up that Antichrist business. She was she was
brother, can I respectfully interrupt you?
Yes.
You know what, George, and again, and young man, whoever I'm speaking to right here.
Yeah, and
nobody really, nobody gets this about that. The quote unquote number of the beast, the 666, and everything like that.
Mm.
You cannot understand what the total meaning of the beast is without understanding the King James Version, which
Correct.
is understanding English and Scottish history,
Correct.
without understanding the Council of Nicaea and 325, without understanding Greek and Latin and Aramaic. Basically what it is, all of this is just a charade that's thrown around people. Is there a quote-unquote number of the beast? Yes, there is. Is it 666? No way on God's, on God's green earth, quote unquote. And I don't mean to offend anybody by saying that, George.
Well, do you think the signature of the Antichrist, though, could very well be a thing? Could it be the computer? Could it be the chips they want to put in us?
Hey, George, it's as simple as this. In 1982, some of the finest minds at MIT, a group of sophomore and junior students, conducted a mathematical experiment and basically proved that, and again, and the prior gentleman that mentioned Terry McKenna, time wave zero, that as the closer that we approach to 2012, and again on the Mayan calendar also. But anyway, here's what's going to happen. According to these MIT students back in the early 1980s, that all of a sudden there's going to be quote unquote zap, and every single human being that exists in the world today is going to be back down in a courtyard in Jerusalem in a crowd of people where Pontius Pilate is asking everybody what their decision is to do with this rebel named Jesus. Now, that was an incredible mathematical equation that these guys did.
First-time caller, you're on with David Booth. Hi there.
How you doing? My name is Jason, calling from Long Island, New York.
Yes, sir.
The question was for David. I actually know the name of that statue you're referring to on the Capitol building.
All right, go ahead. What is it?
It's, I don't know if I could pronounce it properly. It's the goddess of the underworld, Persephone.
Thank you, young man. You are exactly right.
You got it. So what does it all mean, David?
Persephia.
Persephia, thank you.
There you go, sir.
That's what it is.
And young man, can I ask you, George, am I allowed to ask him a question?
Yes, you are, David.
Young man?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Where can you find that at? Nobody can find that at. How did you know that?
I was actually doing some research the other day because I was curious about this whole New World Order thing that they've been talking about. There's some research online. Typed in New World Order on YouTube the other day, and boom, that just happened to pop in there, all the symbols and Greek mythology symbols that are in this country today.
You know what, young man, you're on the right path. I hope you continue on that. You are one of the most remarkable young men that I've ever heard. You know what? And George, I hope I'm allowed to say this, but I wish my sons were like you.
Oh, well, just don't say that too loudly if your sons are around there, David.
No. Adric is up in Cincinnati, and he just had a young daughter, and Justin is dealing with his kids. You know how it is, George.
So what's the significance of that statue?
Well, George, again,
now that we know what it is,
to align, to understand what our country is, to understand who our people are, to understand the significance of the geology and geography of the nation that we live in. A lot of people don't realize, hey, George,
yep.
If you look at a globe and you take Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Maryland, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, New York City, Boston, Massachusetts, and go over London and Paris. On a globe, it's just a straight line. It's all a straight line. There's a reason for that, George.
What's the reason?
George, it boils down to one thing. It's called sacred geometry. Have you ever had anybody on your program?
Yeah, Richard Hoagland talks about geometry all the time.
Have you heard of this gentleman named Richard Hoagland?
Who?
Richard Hoagland.
Me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's on all the time.
I did not know that, sir.
You need to start listening to us again, David.
Okay, well, sir, I don't have the ability to because, I'm on oxygen and Kelly puts me in bed at 7 o'clock every night.
Oh, okay. So you're sleeping while we're on the air.
I can tell you this.
Gosh, we're pushing you tonight, aren't we?
Okay, well, can I ask you this?
Yeah.
If you know Richard Hoagland, do you know Vincent DiPietro?
I know Vincent very well as well.
Absolutely, and Vincent DiPietro, back before anything, that when it comes to the face on Mars and all that research,
Greg Molinar, was it? Richard Hoagland, all of them were geniuses.
Oh, yeah, Vincent. Well, they know me well.
All right.
Well, not know me well, but they know me peripherally.
Wild card line, you're up with us. Hi there.
Yes, hey, excellent program. What a great guest, George. I also knew the information and a whole lot of more of the symbols in a book someone gave me called Rulers of Evil by F. Tupper. That's T as in Tom, U-P-P-E-R, and the last name is spelled S-A-U-S-S-Y. And he brings out the point that if you don't understand, who the goddesses and goddesses are, what the symbols are, you won't understand the invisible rulers. So, but I have a comment and a question. First of all, I want to kind of applaud you for your courage in terms of ayahuasca and willing to go through the veil. And in the spirit of Terrence McKenna, I think this is synchronous because on Saturday, there's the globalmarijuanamarch.com where, they're talking about health freedoms and the use of plants with ibogaine, which can cure all kinds of addictions, and the suppression of this. And it's going to be
for medicinal purposes.
Okay. George, and young lady, can I respectfully interject something here right now?
Well, I guess so. You're the guest.
Okay. Young lady, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, honey. Can you tell me your name?
Her name's Anita.
Anita. One thing that people have to understand, yes, there is a psychic, spiritual, religious, cultural connection between every human being and the plants on this earth. That is not to be confused with marijuana as it is today. The marijuana and all the drugs that they have today, that anybody goes out in the drug market and whatever they do, George, this is not, these are not the same things. These are not the same things. Anita, I can tell you right now, the spiritual experience that a human being wants to have in this world today, they will never have by smoking marijuana or doing cocaine or anything like that, because these are all derived from men.
David, let me ask you, if people are having visions right now about things that are happening, earthquakes, earth changes, tragic events, what do you suggest they do?
What they have to do, first of all, is number one, realize that they aren't alone. The cultural imperative that is dictated upon this world, and your program is the only one in the world. A lot of people don't realize this, George. I know this, and Kathy knows this, and our friends know this, because we're all around the world. Your program is unique, not just in the United States. Your program is unique in the world. Nobody in the world has a program like Coast to Coast. Here is what they need to realize, first of all. Their experience that they're having is not unique. Everybody is having them. Even you're having them. What the cultural imperative is demanding from every person that's listening now is everybody start talking about it.
But why, David? Why is it happening to us?
Because we're in the end times. We're in the third great awakening.
Let's go to our first-time caller line. You're on with us. Hi there.
This is Jeremy from Austin, Texas.
Hi, Jeremy.
I'd like to comment on the name of the statue.
All right.
Caller earlier, he just named one of the names, but the earliest name that she was known as was Semiramis. Other words, known as she's called the Queen of Heaven, or the Bible would call her the Whore of Babylon. Okay, she's got many names such as Athena, Isis, Ishtar, Aphrodite, Demeter, and the name that the other caller said.
Okay, son, can I respectfully interject something to you?
Go ahead, David.
And son, I don't mean any respect. I please believe me, I don't mean any disrespect to you, but I hear this so many times, and from not only here in the States but all around the world, and people on their paths for enlightenment and everything. Everybody is so fixed on this name or that name or this symbology or that symbology. You know what it all boils down to? Here's what it boils down to. And George, actually, you can speak better about this than I can, because you come from Lebanon. Am I correct, sir?
Well, no, I was born in Detroit.
Well, you were born in Detroit, but you have Lebanese ancestry.
Yes.
And part of your Lebanese ancestry comes from a group of people there called the Druze.
True.
And the Druze, and a lot of people don't know this, George, and I don't know if you ever talked about this.
And the Phoenicians.
But the Druze, and listen to this, people, the Druze in Lebanon, the Kurdish people, and they're in Syria, Iraq, Turkey, Iran, the Basque in Spain and France, and the Finnish people, they all have a language which is undefinable by anybody. Nobody can define in human history where these languages came from. But here's what it all boils down to. The basic mythology, cultural imperative of all of these people that I just mentioned just boils down to one thing. Don't focus on anything. Don't focus on any names. Go with what you feel inside, because you know it. It's inside of you.
And many people are feeling that. David, stay with us. We're going to take just a little break right now. So, you do what you do with Kathy and that oxygen that's next to you, and then We'll be back. We'll take final phone calls for you when we come back on Coast to Coast AM. If you need to email me, well, that's very simple. That's George at coasttocoastam.com. We have kept Mr. Booth up way beyond his bedtime, and I appreciate him sticking around for your final phone calls. He's got an oxygen tank right next to him, and I feel a little skittish about that, but we'll take this break. We'll be right back. Tomorrow, Friday into Saturday, one of my favorite nights, those open lines. But when we come back, we're going to wrap up with final phone calls with our guest, David Booth, on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. We'll wrap up with your final calls. David, how are you holding up?
I'm doing fine, George. Thank you, sir.
Oh, great. To a lot of people who haven't heard this incredible story of the series of dreams and that horrible plane crash, would you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, in 1979, I had a series of dreams that an airplane was taking off from a runway, and it was going up into the sky, and then it just it inverted. Looking at it from the front perspective, that the right wing went down, and as it was ascending into the air, and then it just flipped entirely over, and then it went straight down into the ground.
And you had a series of dreams. What made you call the FAA?
10 nights. The reason that I called the FAA was because I didn't know what else to do. And actually, the FAA was the last resort that I had. That the first call that I made was as the advice of my mother, who was a senior counselor at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. And I had called the people down there, and then I called American Airlines. And nobody listened to me, George.
Do they think that you were just whacked out or something?
Well, in those days, nobody knew what to take.
Yeah, a guy calls and says, I'm here having dreams about a plane crash. I mean, how many people honestly would listen to that?
Right. And even I at that time, back in 1979, knew that. But unbeknownst to me was that when I called, the last resort was to call the FAA facility at the Greater Cincinnati Airport,
yes,
which is actually in Kentucky.
Because you didn't know where this was.
No, I had no idea.
Dream. Okay.
I had no idea where it was. Knew it was a DC-10, or I knew it was a large. I knew it was a large airplane.
See, the FAA, after listening to you, thought it would be a DC-10.
Yes, from the airline, because I didn't know anything about aircraft.
Right.
But after listening to my description of the airplane that I described, they were the ones that said it was a DC-10. It was the only thing it could be because on the engine configuration that I had saw. And the bottom line was that 3-4 days prior to the crash, I got a hold of the facility administrator at the FAA at Greater Cincinnati Airport. His name was Paul Williams. And George, we never talked about this, but a lot of people don't realize this. Even back then in 1979, the FAA had an actual written procedure to deal with people calling up with predictions from their dreams, etc.
You're kidding.
I am not kidding you at all.
So they had to go through whatever scenario they had.
It was a checklist. Paul said it was a checklist, which I didn't go through with him. I went through with the girl that I was talking to when I first called.
Yeah.
But when I was talking to her about everything, obviously, that when she was doing that checklist when I was calling her, at one point she told me to, hold on. And then I was talking with Paul Williams, who was the facility administrator.
Do they ever think when they're interviewing you or talking to you that do they say to themselves, now, we also might have somebody here who might plant a bomb or do something. Do they suspect that?
And those days, no, absolutely not.
Or nowadays, probably yes, huh?
Nowadays, well, no, I don't know. I would assume so, but my knowledge of it, no. But my knowledge of what I do know back in those days, that there was a checklist that the FAA had that had been provided to them that when people called up talking about precognitive experiences having to do with an airline being crashed, that there was a checklist that they went through, and if they reached a certain level on that checklist, they put them up to the facility administrator.
All right, when the plane crash tragically occurred, 271 people died. What did Paul Williams say to you afterward? Did he call you? Did he say, "Oh, my God, David, here it is"?
Oh, George, let me tell you something. You know, that May 25th was the worst day by far of my life. And I've gone through a lot of worse days, including, when I was a kid back in Nam. But that day was the worst day of my life. And I remember that morning that I woke up on May 25th, I had known instinctively that was the last time that I would have that dream, because I had it 10 days in a row. I went to work that day, and I could not concentrate on anything. I came back to the house. I think I took off around 10 o'clock in the morning. Called my boss, that's it. I can't work anymore. I think it was around in between 2 and 3 o'clock that the phone rang. And I also called my wife, Pam, and she had come home from work. And she was the one that answered the phone. And I'll never forget that, George. I was sitting out on the porch. The phone rang. Pam walked in, answered the phone. And remember, these are the days without cell phones or any of those, like cellular phones or anything.
And Pam must have been a first wife.
Absolutely.
Okay.
She was my first wife.
Right. We just talked to Kathy, and I'm wondering, how many do you have here?
No. I was widowed before Kathy.
Okay.
And but anyway, Pam had answered the phone, and I wasn't even looking outside or looking inside the door where she was. I was just sitting there, and then Pam came out, and and her face was like, you know that old story, their faces turn ashen gray.
Yes.
That's the only time in my life I've ever seen that. That's exactly what Pam's face was.
Did the dreams stop after the crash?
That morning when I woke up, I knew that was the last day that I would ever have that dream. That was the last day that I would ever have that dream, George.
Have you since, David, and we'll finish up with calls here, they're lining up for you again, had a series, and I'm talking about recently, of horrible dreams that you can tell us about?
Okay, well, that's a loaded question there, and respectfully, just to answer it in two parts. Number one, yes. Number two, there's only been one other dream that I've related in public, and that has to do with in 2004 when I talked to you.
About that object that was coming up?
Oh, George, even today, as I'm sitting here right now, that there is an extra, it's a planetary type body. It's dark. Its mass is dark. It comes up from our South Pole. It comes up. It pulls away from the Earth. It goes in between the Earth and the Moon. And as it does that, in the northwestern part of the North American continent, there is a gigantic, humongous eruption.
So you're still having that dream?
No.
Oh, okay, thank God.
No. I had it. That's the one that I had. And that's a connection that we had.
Right.
I had that in 2003.
But they've gone away then?
No, just like the other dream that I had before. 10 days in a row.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
Just 10 days in a row.
All right, without a specific timetable on when?
No specific timetable.
Let's take some final calls here. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with us. Hi there.
Yeah, it's David from Victoria, British Columbia.
Hi, David.
Anyway, I would like the opportunity to ask David his impressions of a vision I had in a meditation around potential Earth changes. And here I'm in this meditation, whatever state, and I'm going on this path to there's a courtyard, sort of a Grecian courtyard, and there's this classic old guy in a robe with a beard. And in front of him is a globe in granite, like about 3 foot in diameter, set in stone ribs. And it's twirling around like the Earth twirls around on an angle. And then he telepathically, in this vision, communicates to me, watch this. And the globe goes into this wobble like a gyroscope that might be bumped. And whoa, whoa, whoa. And then it rights itself and is twirling around in right side up. And then it's communicated to me in your lifetime. And it seemed to relate to what Nancy was talking about, too. And so I wonder if David would be interested in commenting on that.
Oh, absolutely.
And also, I wonder if I got the impression, too, that the Dust Bowl of the 30s was just kind of a little teaser of what's to come soon. So what do you have to think?
Okay, go ahead, David.
Okay. No, I mean, it's, first of all, I admire the young man for calling up and actually articulating his question in the way that he did so articulately. George, in Malachi, that's one of the last old books of the Old Testament. They talked about that in the last days, that the young men, quote unquote, young women too, will be given visions. What we are lacking now today in the cultural atmosphere that we live in, that these young kids today, they are having these visions, they're having these experiences, they're having these feelings. And guess what, George? Like, George, when you and I were kids, we always had a church to go to. These kids today, they have no place to go to.
No, that's true. A lot of them do not. To
be able to explain them.
What do you think of Ouija boards, David?
Oh, let me tell you something, George. Here's the thing about Ouija boards. The common flippant thing is to say, "Oh, they're evil. Don't do anything with them," and stuff like that. The reality is, George, and I'm sure you know that, and you've probably had guests on that actually talked about that. Everything that has to do with the Ouija board or anything like a Ouija board, hey, George, they come from us. They come from not just from the totality of us, they come from an aspect of us.
We conjure it up. I'm going to be doing a special show, David, with a Ouija board, and I think Evelyn Paglini, who is a witch, she is a good witch, is coming with her own Ouija board for us that she says might be a little safer for me. Let's take some final calls here and wrap things up. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Hi there.
Hi, this is Anna from Minnesota.
Hi, Anna. Whereabouts in Minnesota? I lived there for a year.
Oh, it's
in
on
Minneapolis.
Mankato.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, I used to live up there. My question for you, for the guest, since earlier in the show he was saying that he had close connections with David Icke, if he believes or if he has any knowledge of this, are interdimensional beings or like nefarious forces trying to interject and quell the evolution or progress of the human consciousness or soul, and how does this relate to 2012 and the end times?
I'm sorry. What was her name, George?
Her name is Anna.
Anna.
Yeah.
Anna, let me tell you something. David Icke is one of the most incredible human beings that I've ever met in my life. And believe me, when you hear that coming from somebody like me, that should be taken with a couple grains of salt. One thing, and let me just give you an example. Back in 1985, I think it was, sweetie, 85, 86? 85, when we were there with Dave and his wife in 85, that David and his wife, Kathy and I went over there, and remember, nobody knew me. Well, people know me, of course, back then, but nobody knew Dave. David he was a soccer player. A lot of people don't realize that.
That's right, and a good one.
Oh, he was the best. Do you like soccer, George?
I love soccer.
Oh, okay.
Now they pay these guys millions of dollars a year. He got out too soon.
Yes, but in 1985 we went over there, and I don't know how many people realize this, but there's that when you talk about England, I mean, it's just such a misnomer about the different nationalities that live there. You got the Welsh, you got the British, you got the Scottish, And a lot of people don't realize, too, that the Scottish actually, I don't know if you heard about it, George, or not, and I don't even know, but, the Scottish may have voted for independence from England today in their elections, their original elections. But anyway, there's this place up in Scotland called the
Roslin Chapel.
Roslin Chapel. And back in 1985, Dave and I and our wives, we went up there, and it was about 300 meters off from there that David showed us a passage that went down there, and no word of a lie, George. The moment we went in that passage, and it was an ancient passage, some way, from back in the 14th century, something like that.
Well, some people think the Ark of the Covenant is buried there.
Oh, no. George, no word of a lie. I got goosebumps on my arm right now. Kathy will never forget this, too. And Kathy, she's a Tufts girl. She has a master's from Tufts University. So she's always been the pragmatic one. But even she knows right now. And look at you, Kathy. You got the goosebumps, too. There were these two, lizard human beings that came up to that gate and just glared at us. They just glared at us. And Kathy, now me, I'm freaking out. Now Dave, if he's standing there and he's pointing at him, I'm showing you, I told you. His wife, she runs screaming, and she tries to grab Kathy, but Kathy is just standing there just looking. 5 minutes later, you know how many bobbies are around there? There were bobbies in that days, George?
Oh, yeah, without guns.
Oh, yeah. Kathy and I went back there. As a matter of fact, back in 2004, that was the next time we went back there. That entrance is sealed up. But that was one of the, not the most freaky incidents, but that was one of the most freaky incidents that we ever had in our life.
Well,
because nobody was believing David at that time.
You got to get David back on for us because he's had some rough times lately, David. I think we have time for one more quick call, then we have to wrap it up. If you can do this in 30 seconds, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, caller.
Hello.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable. First try, I get on,
and
I'm the last caller.
And we're almost done.
Hey, anyway, I'm Ronnie from Connecticut, and I hear everybody talking about all these meditations and stuff. I'm not, don't have to go into that, but for the last few years, it's like when I go, something's up, I'll get a call from somebody or something weird will happen, and then some bad thing will happen, And now, for the last year, you blew my mind before, Dave, when you said about how it was affecting your work. It's just I've been so depressed, and there's just like this force all around me that people think, my friends think I'm crazy.
Well, let me tell you something, Ronnie. You're not crazy because a lot of people are beginning to feel like you are feeling. I don't know what it is. We had a mini feeling, and then we had this horrible Virginia Tech shooting, but this one's even bigger. It really is. David, thank you. You take care of yourself. Get some sleep. David Booth, our guest, website, whatdoesitmean.com. For Steve Carr, Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladesseur, Ross Mitchell, Alan Corbett, Stephanie Smith, Ian Punnett, and Art Bell. I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe.